Yeah, we're ready to roll. We're ready. Mm-hmm. We are live, everybody, for another Duran Friday live stream. If you guys can hear me, let me know. If you guys can see me, let me know. You should be also seeing Alexander over there. Mm-hmm. Over there, somewhere next to me on the screen, depending how you're watching this feed. Welcome, everybody, to another live. We have got an interesting topic, a lot of news to cover. There is some breaking news on the UK signing an agreement with Japan, a trade deal with Japan. That's interesting. There is, of course, the Woodward book, which is, they tried to make it into a big deal, but it fell flat. And of course, we've got more developments in the Mueller coup against Trump. And the impending coup that they're trying to put forth, which they're not even hiding their plans. They're just throwing it all out there. So anyway,
bizarre that they should be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump into it. Welcome to everybody who's joining us wherever you are. In Serbia, I see we have people in Cape Town. How are you, Paul? We have Valies joining us, I believe, in Ohio, from California, USA. Let's see where else. Alexander, real quick, from Sheffield, from St. Petersburg. Elizaveta from Russia, from Amsterdam, Manchester, UK, Liverpool. Where else? Where else are people joining us tonight? From Brazil, Reykjavik, Iceland, NYC, Michigan. How is Michigan going to go, David? Trump or Biden? India, Texas, Slovakia, Australia, Perth, New York, Oregon. All right. Let's jump into it. I think we also have moderating Spartan Warrior Queen is also with us. I believe she is with us. Welcome once again, Spartan Warrior Queen. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Noreen in West Clare, Ireland, from Slovenia, from Norway, Germany, Sweden, Chicago. Michigan is going Trump. There, you heard it here first. You heard it here first. Alan Watson, hello. Hello, Raul. Atlanta, Mexico, Scotland, Sweden, SoCal, Louisiana, Wales. Okay, Alexander, let's get rolling. We have in London, the Oracle of London, Alexander Mercouris. How are you doing this Friday, Alexander?
It's been an absolutely beautiful day, and we are doing extremely well. We've had the kind of day when you do your housekeeping things. We've had builders and people like that to look at things in our house, but it's been wonderful day, the kind that London does wonderfully well. So we are having a great day here.
All right, Alexander, we have got news. We've got news that the Mueller team, maybe you may want to call it the Weinstein team, but the Mueller team, before they gave their phones over to the DOJ or the Inspector General, I think maybe both of them, they scrubbed, I've heard 15 phones, I've heard 27 phones. I've heard that they input their password 10 times, and the phone, the Apple, activated this device that would wipe out the hard drive. I've heard that they've wiped it out on their own. I've heard that they accidentally lost the phone, accidentally broke it. All kinds of excuses. Actually, Weinstein had his phone scrubbed. He had 3 phones. 2 of them, their hard drive completely disappeared. This is right before they handed it over to the DOJ so they could investigate Russiagate and investigate what was going on with the special counsel Mueller. We also have from Byron York's book, a revelation, and you'll get into this as well, that Mueller was actually, for lack of a better word, kind of out of it, kind of senile in a way, had no idea what was going on throughout the investigation. Mm-hmm. I believe that, looking at his testimony that he gave, that he was clueless. We have Vindman. We know that Vindman now was the driving force behind Ukraine Gate. We also have a new whistleblower that Schiff is trying to conjure up. This is a fascinating story. Schiff is trying to conjure up another whistleblower, and he's saying we're going to have another investigation based on this whistleblower, but it's completely falling flat. Alexander, I don't know. To me, it seems like the Democrats are literally just throwing the kitchen sink at Trump. Everything from protests to riots to whistleblowers to you name it. They're throwing it all at Trump because they know they're toast come November. Mail-in ballots, all of it. What do you make of all the news that's floating around from Russiagate to Ukrainegate to Vindman to Adam Schiff to everything that's going on, Alexander Mercouris?
I think you're well, first of all, I mean, you're absolutely right. They are throwing everything at him. And when you talked about the coup that is being talked about, and you know, we did a whole live show about that last week. I mean, coups are normally things that are plotted in secret. This must be the most widely publicized and trailed coup in human history. I mean, we've been talking about it, hearing about it for weeks ahead. And when people talk and speculate and plan and game plan in this way, it's a sign that they're panicking. It's a sign that they're losing their heads. That's what I think.
Alexander, people are saying to turn up your volume on your mic. Can you find that to turn it up?
Well, let me see.
Your volume is low. We're getting
is low. Is that better? Is that better?
I'm hearing you a little low as well now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Try it again. Go to the settings.
Settings. I just have. They say it shows loud. So mic. No, it's How about now? No.
No, I think you're still low. People are in live stream saying no.
No.
Slightly more.
Slightly more.
Worse. Now we're getting worse.
And now we're getting worse. Oh dear. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, Alexander. Something's wrong with your. Hit that the USB.
Hit the USB. Just a second. It's this one here. So many things now.
No, now you're completely gone. Now you've muted yourself. Unmute yourself.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, good. Well, speak again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I think you're good now.
Okay, sorry about this.
Okay,
guys.
so
you gather. I may be many things, but a technical person.
Okay. Take it from the top then, Alexander. Take it from the top.
Well, I mean, just to say, you covered lots of points and all very good points, but you're quite right. The overarching story is that the Democrats are panicking and they're throwing everything they can at Donald Trump. And they're now talking about coups and plots and schemes to stop him being, president again. And it's quite extraordinary when that happens because coups normally are plotted in secret. This must be the most publicized coup in the history of the world. So it just goes to show how panicked they are that they're behaving in this way. But if I can just start, I hope everybody is hearing me, by the way, now. Is that, yeah, good. If I can just start with the phones, the Mueller teams, or should we say the Andrew Weissman teams, because I've no doubt at all it's Andrew Weissman who was running the show. We'll come to that in a moment. Andrew Weissman, his 3 phones, well, they've all been wiped. That's just chance. Just coincidence that happened. It's coincidence that it happened to all those other people. Well, of course, if you believe that, then, as I like to say, I have a bridge to sell you. I mean, why were all those phones wiped? Well, could it be that they had conversations they didn't want us to know about with Guess and Adam Schiff, possibly? with parts of the media, with the New York Times. Maybe they said things to each other, which they shouldn't have been doing. Who knows? But clearly, there were things that were going on, that they were saying to each other, that they were communicating with people that they don't want us to know about. And that's why they were wiped. And that's completely improper behavior. And in any normal system, it should be investigated and looked into. But that already tells you something about the Mueller investigation. Now, I have been reading this very interesting book by Byron York. It's called Obsession. Byron York writes for the Washington Examiner. He is a pretty mainstream journalist, but he's close to Trump, and he's close also to the Republican Party, to congressional Republicans especially, to people like Devin Nunes, for example. And one of the things he says is that he's had conversations with Donald Trump's lawyers, the people who were actually acting for Donald Trump over the course of the Mueller investigation. And one of the things they found was that Mueller, when he was appointed, well, you know, he didn't seem to be entirely alert, but he did seem to be, you know, sort of engaged to some extent. And then with every passing day and every passing week, his mind seemed to be wandering, and he seemed to be increasingly less engaged. And after a certain point, and this is, by the way, in Byron York's book, this legal team, Donald Trump's legal team, decided that Mueller had completely lost touch with what was going on, had little idea of, you know, what was actually being done by his own team, and that the decisions were being taken by other people, and in particular by one other person. Now, Byron York doesn't actually identify that person, but I mean, it's quite clear that he has Andrew Weissman in mind. So it is not the Mueller investigation, it is the Andrew Weissman investigation. And certain consequences flowed from that, because Mueller gave the Trump lawyers a promise right at the start that the investigation would be focused entirely on collusion and would be over quickly. And what Trump's lawyers realized come the autumn of 2017 is that the Mueller team knew that there had been no collusion and that they were carrying on. So they came back and they said to Mueller, you know, why are you continuing? What's going on? And he didn't really seem very engaged. But then it turned out that there was this whole obstruction investigation also underway. You know, the Donald Trump had in some way obstructed the investigation. And it seems the lawyers at that point were absolutely furious. And they told Mueller, who, as I said, wasn't very engaged or very understanding about what was happening, that they provided him with a huge amount of material, more than any other president has ever done to an investigation, on the assurance that the investigation would be over fast and that he had broken that promise. And in fact, Mueller apparently had no coherent answer. So when Mueller came to the Congress and gave his famous testimony, and he completely fell apart, and he didn't know what was going on, and it all looked like he was vacant and aimless, that was what the people in Trump's legal team had expected and realized all along. And they also, I think, came to the conclusion right from the outset that Mueller had been appointed special counsel because the people who maneuvered his appointment always knew that he wasn't really there and that he would cede control of the investigation to other people. So he was a front. He was a front man, just as Biden, if you like, is a front man. They seem to pick people who are not really able to control what they do, because there are other people behind the scenes who are pulling their strings. That was what happened with Biden. That was what happened with Mueller. That seems to be what is happening with Biden. Behind Biden. Behind Mueller, sorry, there was Weissman. Behind Weissman, there was Schiff. Who knows?
And Clinton.
And Clinton. And
I mean, Weissman was Hillary Clinton's, I think he worked in Hillary Clinton's campaign and may have even been the Clinton campaign lawyer or one of the lawyers on staff.
Exactly. And that's exactly the same scenario that we're seeing with Biden now. It seems to me that somebody decided, this worked before. They were able to keep this investigation going on nothing for 3 years. So they're trying the same trick again in the election with Biden.
But the Republicans also chose Mueller. And that says a lot.
Absolutely.
Because not only did the Republicans choose Mueller, but they protected him as well.
Yeah.
All the time, the Republicans said to Trump, to the Trump team, don't you dare touch Mueller. He is a man of integrity. Don't you touch him. If you touch him, then we really will impeach you. So it seems that there might have been a type of collusion or an understanding between swamp creatures left and right, i.e. the Weissman, Clinton, Obama machines and the Democrats, the Pelosi's on the one side, and the Lindsey Grahams and all the other rhinos and Republicans.
The Birds, the Mitch
and the Birds, on the other side, who may have said, you know what, let's get rid of Trump once and for all.
Oh, this is exactly what happened. I don't think there's any doubt about this at all, because, of course, Mueller was brought in. He was supposed to be this great man of integrity, this granite-featured, square-jawed G-man who was going to get to the bottom of everything. He was also, remember, and it was often talked about, a registered Republican. And in fact, he wasn't really there. And they all knew this. Everybody knew this. The reason they would have known this, by the way, is that quite apart from the fact that, it's inconceivable that a person of Mueller's prominence, could have, they wouldn't have known that, the man was having cognitive issues. He was interacting. He had to interact on a fairly regular basis with Trump's legal team. And Trump's legal team were absolutely outspoken about this. They were telling Trump, they were telling people in the White House, and that message must have got back to Congressional and especially Senate Republicans. And yet they went along with the fiction that Mueller really was this great investigator getting to the bottom of everything, and that he really was someone who should be allowed to get to the bottom of everything, with the implication that there was something to get to the bottom of. So they went along with it. Of course they did. And I have no doubt that they did that in the full knowledge and complete understanding that keeping that investigation going as long as it was going was causing immense damage to Donald Trump and to the presidency and to the Republican administration. Because, of course, this was a Trump-led Republican administration. But the Republicans in the Senate, for whatever reason, were prepared to go along with it, to collude with it, if you like. That word collusion has been used and thrown about a lot. Well, it seems to me this is one instance when you can say it happened.
And notice who came to Trump's aid in all of this. It was the Congress, and it was kind of these new dynamic young Congress people, congressmen, like Jim Jordan and Nunez. I think people never expected to see these guys really take on the hoax. I mean, I never knew who they were until, the whole Russiagate thing broke and they started to take the lead. It wasn't really the Senate that, came to Trump's aid. It was these guys, the Matt Gaetz, the Jim Jordans, the Nunez, the Lee Zelder, all these like 4 or 5 House Republicans, young guys, dynamic guys that aren't really or weren't really part of this, Republican Senate establishment. They're the ones that came to bat for Trump, and they're the ones that really broke the back of Schiff and the Russiagate hoax, and Mueller for that matter.
Absolutely. I mean, they were the young guns who had come into Congress. Of course, being in the House of Representatives, you are much closer in some ways to the American people and to the electoral base than you are in the Senate. In the Senate, you get reelected every 6 years. in the House of Representatives, you get re-elected every 2. So I think they were much closer to the, the electorate, the American electorate, and the American people. And I think also they had not been assimilated into the Republican establishment, the sort of grandees who run the Republican Party, the Bush, the Bush family, the Mitch McConnells, all those sort of people. They were absolutely not part of that world. And when they saw what was happening, they exposed it. I mean, they were the people who, as you absolutely rightly say, broke it apart. And by the way, they will get rewarded for it. I mean, Republicans up and down the country now know of Devin Nunes. They know of Jordan. They know of the others in a way that they didn't know before.
All right, Alexander, let's get to Schiff's latest and greatest whistleblower, the new guy that he's trying to throw out there. What's the story behind this non-story, really?
Well,
but Schiff's trying, you got to hand it to Schiff. The guy doesn't give up. That's for sure.
No, he doesn't. I mean, Schiff. That's what it is. I mean, he's also got he's a bad script writer with one story, so he comes up with the same story again and again and again. I mean, this time it's this person from the Department of Homeland Security, supposedly, who's been spreading this story about all kinds of information being suppressed about the bad things that were being done by the Russians and others. Only it turns out that this guy, who is not really a whistleblower at all, again, has an extraordinarily bad record and is widely acknowledged to be completely unreliable. But this is what Schiff does. He discovers these non-sources. He's very good at sort of promoting them. The media circus, the sort of pro-Democrat media, immediately jumps on and pretends that he's come up with something, when of course he hasn't. And if I can just come back to Byron York and his book Obsession, one of the most interesting things about Obsession is that you find out that in an awful lot of the leaks that were going on through Russiagate and Ukrainegate and through the Mueller investigation and all of that, all seem to originate from one place, which is Congress. And it's actually not difficult to narrow down which office in Congress was responsible. Adam Schiff's fingerprints are everywhere. They are on everything. He is the person who finds the so-called sources. He is the person who promotes them. It's his people who speak to the media. It's his stories that get reproduced in the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, and all of that. And this latest non-whistleblower is just another example. A person who has absolutely no credibility, and the story that he's promoting has been denied, and in fact has no reality.
Alexander, there's one thing that connects Vindman to Schiff.
Yeah.
And there's one thing to me that connects Russiagate to Ukrainegate and the desire to remove Trump. And that is the military-industrial complex. And to be even more specific, even Lindsey Graham, and to be even more specific, it's Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. And I think behind it all is the sale of weapons in Ukraine. Of course, you could say Syria and the Middle East, but I look at, say, someone like John McCain, who hated Trump, but was desperate to pile in the weapons into Ukraine. You look at Lindsey Graham, who hates Trump and is desperate to get weapons into Ukraine. Once again, McCain and Lindsey Graham have actually been to Ukraine, and they've been awarded medals by the government in Ukraine. You look at Vindman, and you'll get into what Vindman did and his connection to Ukraine, even being offered the Ministry of Defense position, not once, not twice, 3 times. We also know that there's that Ukraine had, oh God, I forgot her name, who was the finance minister of Ukraine as well, who was an American citizen. People in the live stream will remember her name. Yaresko. There you go. Yeah. You have her as well. But you have Adam Schiff, And what many people don't publicize, and I've written a bunch of articles about it way back, like 2-3 years ago, about Schiff's connection to Ukraine and the fact that the person that funds the Schiff campaign and the Schiff machine is a Ukraine oligarch. He's an American citizen now, but he was born and raised in Ukraine. He's a multi-billionaire. I believe his name is Igor Pasternak, if I'm not mistaken. He's an arms dealer. In other words, he's made his fortune in the weapons industry. And here you have Schiff, once again, doing everything he can to get Trump out of the White House. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to the military-industrial complex, Ukraine, and weapons sales. And of course, you had a couple of days ago what I thought was an amazing, amazing speech by Trump, where he actually takes on the military-industrial complex. Not since JFK have we heard a U.S. president say, the military-industrial complex does not like me because I want to pull out of wars, and they want to sell missiles and weapons and make money off of the wars. What do you make of everything I just said?
First of all, I think that, can I just, before we get onto it in more, we need to discuss it in more detail, because I thought Trump's speech, by the way, his comments about the military-industrial complex, about the different attitudes towards him of various people in the military, that the fact that the leaders of the military, the generals, the chiefs have one attitude, but the people who actually serve, who fight the battles, that they have a completely different view of him. I thought it was one of the most important statements that Donald Trump has made over the course of his presidency. And I think it puts the finger on what has been the problem that the deep state, if you like, has had with Donald Trump all along. The military-industrial complex is a huge power in the United States. There is a vast amount of money to be made through making weapons and through selling weapons and through getting involved in wars. And of course, it has a permanent incentive to keep wars going, because that's how it survives. That's how it thrives. And can I also repeat, the United States is a young country, but if you look at its history, the existence of a military-industrial complex, which people like Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy were warning about, is a very new thing in America. The United States became the great republic, the economic superpower, by being a completely civilian nation. It did not have a big standing military. It did not have huge arms companies in the way that the imperial powers like Germany, Britain, and Russia did. And that was one of the things that made the US very different. And it made a huge difference to the way politics was conducted in the United States before this huge military complex emerged. So it's something new. Eisenhower and Kennedy understood that. Trump is repeating the fact that it is new. And of course, it is a major factor that is driving these wars. But alongside the military-industrial complex, there are all the think tanks and NGOs and things that it largely funds. And within that world of lobbyists and so-called thinkers and
mainstream media channels
and all these things, you now have this vast commentariat of people who seem to see their entire role as promoting wars and promoting these very complicated and very intricate geopolitical strategies in places like Ukraine, in the Middle East, in all kinds of other places, which serve the interests of the military-industrial complex at some level, no doubt, because they believe in all these strategies also, but which don't serve the interests of the United States and the American people, and which, for the reasons I said before, are ultimately non-American. I mean, this is not what the United States was supposed to be all about. George Washington, in his made this famous speech in which he said that the United States should not go around the world looking for monsters to slay. It should stay out of engagements. It should focus on the republic and building itself up and making itself the democracy that it eventually became. That's what the American policy, that's what the American system was all about. Donald Trump talks about returning to that. All of these people, the military industrial complex, the arms companies, the top generals, the commentators in the media, the thinkers in the think tanks, the people who work in the Rand Corporation, the spies in the CIA, the spies in, the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's the NSA. That's why they oppose him, because he says, you're not part of what the permanent setup of the United States is supposed to be. I want to return to the American system as it was and which made America great. That's what making America great again is all about. And they are horrified about it. And that's why they resist him. And that's why we now even have talk of coups.
Led by who? Coups led by who? By the military. The Democrats are saying who is going to take the final step to solidify the coup. Once they do their mail-in ballots and they delay the election, counting and everything like that, all the Democrats from Clinton to Biden, they're all saying when all is said and done, a week or two after the election, the military will come in. They'll step in and they'll remove Trump. And on a side note, Alexander, let's not forget who was the de facto president of Ukraine after the coup. It was Joe Biden. Doesn't take much to connect all the dots here. What's going on?
It doesn't. But can I just say something? I think any idea of using the military in that way, and there are some people crazy enough, obviously, in the Democratic Party establishment who think that, because they're openly talking about it, are playing with fire. Because not only would the intervention of the military in a political conflict in the United States be completely unprecedented and a fundamental violation of the constitutional and Republican tradition upon which the United States is based, but immediately, I predict that a great majority of the soldiers who serve in the military, most of whom appear to be Donald Trump supporters, will be very unhappy to be involved in it. So it's all very well for a general in the Pentagon who might, detest Donald Trump and might feel that Donald Trump isn't, the kind of president that he wants, because this general is somebody who is very much part of the complex that wants this aggressive forward foreign policy of perpetual wars. He might, from his desk, want, an army division to come to Washington to round up people and to arrest Trump. But the people who have to carry that out, the soldiers, may feel about that very differently. And I've lived through a country, Greece, where there was a military coup. And I can say that creating divisions in the military is a very bad idea. And it will backfire ultimately on anybody who actually creates them. In the case of Greece, by the way, most of the rank and file soldiers were not happy about being involved in a coup. A coup happened, and ultimately all the people who carried out the coup, the generals and the colonels and all those, ended up in prison. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. Here's a thought, Alexander, that I was thinking of the other day. We did a video on the comments, the fake comment narrative that Trump said, the military were losers.
Yeah.
And we kind of explored that a little. And my first thought on it, and I think it was correct, was that the Democrats and the DNC, they were just trying to divert from the riots, which were doing them a lot of damage in the polls. And so they got the Atlantic to create this article, and they concocted this. Trump said the military are losers. And I think there's merit to that. But what if they somehow got hold or got wind that Trump was going to actually say in a speech in a day or two that he's going to take on the military industrial complex? What if they got hold of some of Trump's policy thinking that he is going to get troops back home? He's going to reduce the troop counts in Iraq and Afghanistan. What if they got wind of that? Because we know there's a lot of leaking within the Trump White House. And they said, you know what? We're going to try to paint Trump now as anti-military. We're going to try to sow anger and hatred amongst the rank and file, amongst the generals that still do support him, in order to prepare for that November coup that they're pretty much flat out just admitting they're going to go through with. What if there was something more to that Atlantic article, something beyond just distracting from the riots, and something about preparing the ground for the military to be upset with Trump or to go against Trump, so that once again they can get that final piece to the puzzle? Because they need that military component. Every single coup needs the military component, and they need everyone on board. That's one of the reasons the military coup in Turkey 3-4 years ago failed. It's because they couldn't get all the military on board. You have to have the entire military on board if you're going to have a coup succeed. So I'm starting to think maybe they're trying to sow some anger amongst the rank and file who do like Trump, to try and get them on board on their side for when November happens. Because you also have now Facebook and Twitter, and I'll wrap it up here. You also have Facebook and Twitter who have come out openly. Zuckerberg came out openly and said it. Twitter has now announced that they will ban anybody mentioning election results when they come in the same day or the following day. They're going to hold off on it, and they're going to hold it for about a week or two. They've openly admitted it. They're preparing the way, but I think they've got the media. They've got that. They've got that wrapped up, the social media and the mainstream media. I think they need that military component in order to successfully remove Trump from office when he does win the electoral college, which he will win, and we all know he'll win it. Alexander.
Well, first of all, no government can ever survive in any country unless it has the loyalty or the support of the armed forces. And if you're going to overthrow a government, you need the loyalty and support of the armed forces even more. So if you're going to take an unconstitutional act like removing a president from power, an elected president from power, you absolutely need to know that you have the armed forces and the security services behind you, because without it, a coup cannot happen. I mean, you're absolutely right. As I said, I've lived through a coup. We reported for the Duran on the coup in Turkey when it happened in 2016. We remember very well how, there was all this movement of troops and tanks and aircraft. And what happened was that the soldiers weren't prepared in the end to obey, and the whole thing disintegrated. So you absolutely need all the pieces in play. You need the loyalty of the rank and file, or at least their willingness to go along with it, because without it, it can't take place. Now, I am not sure about this. I think there's two possibilities. Firstly, it could be that this story was put out without any knowledge of what Trump was going to say, in order to create divisions between Donald Trump and the servicemen and women in the armed forces who generally support him. And that may have been the intention. If that was the intention, then Trump did what he always does. I've said this before. He is brilliant on the rebound. He came back brilliantly by making this extraordinary speech in which he said the statement that, it may be that the leadership of the military doesn't like me, but the rank and file are with me. And we all know it's true. And of course, it crystallized the whole thing, and it exploded, if you like, this fiction, this attempt that they were trying to create, which was, divisions between Trump and the soldiers. Alternatively, if Trump had already been intending to say something like that, then I think that spreading this story about, Trump not respecting the military was actually a mistake, because it actually highlighted in the end even further the point that Trump was making, which is that he wants to end these wars. He wants to bring the soldiers back. He doesn't want young Americans going around and fighting in all kinds of places around the world, giving their blood, giving their lives for projects, geopolitical projects that are not ultimately important for the future and for the well-being of the United States. It gave him the opening to do that. And it emphasized again who it is who actually supports those things. Now, I've had lots of dealings with soldiers in my time. I used to give advice to British soldiers. That was one of my jobs a long time ago. So I got to know a lot about how people who enlist in the army feel. And the first thing to say is, one is always impressed by the readiness of these people to lay down their lives for their country. But there is always, on the part of soldiers, a feeling of trust, that they have to believe that that sacrifice which they're prepared to make will always be made in a proper cause. And that cause for American soldiers is the defense of the United States. It is not to pursue geopolitical games in Ukraine or Afghanistan or wherever. So that's something which I think all of these exchanges that we've seen over the last few days is going to have made it even clearer to the soldiers in the military, the service people in the military and their families, who understands that and who will fulfill that trust, and who, on the contrary, doesn't even have any conception of that trust, but is trying to use them. So if that was the plan, it's backfired.
All right, Alexander, let's switch gears a little bit. Have you seen some of Biden's speech? He's on the road, kind of on the road. I mean, he doesn't travel too far. He kind of, stays very close to home. But he just, he doesn't want to be doing this.
No,
at the end of every sentence.
Yeah, it's becoming embarrassing. I mean, this is my own personal.
No, but he doesn't want to do it. I really think that Biden doesn't want to be there. At the end of every speech or every sentence he says, he just kind of sits there and goes, I mean, he did like he was doing a press conference, and they were going to take questions from scripted questions, teleprompter, scripted questions. Everything is very controlled. And he's like, he looks over to his team and he goes, "Are there any questions?" And I guess someone on his team on the side said, "Yeah." And he just goes, "Okay, let's take questions." I mean, he does not want to be doing this at all. What is your thoughts on
that's
Biden
exactly right.
and why they're continuing with this fiction?
I mean, the man is exhausted. I mean, he's of an age. I mean, he's of an age when most people retire. I mean, he absolutely doesn't have the energy or the drive or the focus to be president of the United States. I mean, we've said this before. It's becoming more and more obvious. Donald Trump may also be in his 70s, but he has all the energy and all the drive and all the enthusiasm, which makes him convincing as president. It's not just a question of how many years you have. It's how you feel, how you are. Biden doesn't have it. And, when he goes out and goes on these sort of road shows, it becomes even more painfully apparent. I'm increasingly doubting, by the way, that they will allow him into a debate with Trump. I think that this is doing so looks incredibly risky. And if it happens, it will be a train wreck. That's what I think.
Only if they have some really good drugs to pump into him. Are they going to let him into a debate? I'm not joking either. That's not
well,
only if they have something to give him that will really ramp him up for a good hour or two.
Well, exactly. I mean, he didn't do very well in the debates, in the primaries. The idea that he's going to do well in these debates, I mean, on everything that we have seen, it doesn't look like it. I mean, the poor man shouldn't be put through what he is being put through. But just like Robert Mueller, we were talking about at the beginning of the program, he's not really in charge. Other people are. They've chosen him. They've picked him precisely because he cannot be in charge. Just as Mueller didn't really have the abilities any longer to be his own mind. The same, unfortunately, is true of Biden. And that is obvious. And when that happens, that should make you very concerned about the motivations of the people who are behind this thing.
Yeah, they picked him because they know they could rule from the shadows, and they picked him because of that reason. But I think they kind of underestimated the fact or miscalculated the fact that he may not even make it all the way through to the election. I mean, they probably thought, we could get this guy in office, maybe carry him over the finish line, maybe sit in the White House for 6 months, and then move in Kamala and get those wheels moving. But I think now they're kind of crapping in their pants because they're saying, I don't think this guy won. I don't know if he'll make it. And number two, he really does not want to be doing this. I mean, he is sending every signal to his team that he does not want to be there. It's obvious now. He does not want to be doing this.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the point is this is what all that media control you were talking about is all about. That's why Zuckerberg and Twitter and all of these people are clamming down and, closing down all things. One, they don't want to expose the ghost of a man that Biden has become, which is what we see. And of course, obviously, they don't want the election results to be discussed and reported because if you discuss and report and comment on election results, it makes it more difficult to manipulate them. So you create secrecy and you create opacity and all of this. I think that what the Democrats did when they picked Biden, this is a big name. He's been around in American politics for a long time. He's a person with some charm. He's had it before. He was a skillful politician. He made a convincing front, just as Mueller made a convincing front. And they thought that because they have the media completely sewn up and because they have television completely sewn up, they would be able to push it and not enough people would notice. Once again, they have greatly underestimated, I think, the extent to which the American people do take an interest in their elections and in who is going to be their president. So I think this is a scheme that is unraveling before our eyes, and it's painful to watch.
Yeah, I'm looking at the live stream. A lot of people are saying, they want Biden to get in, and then eventually Kamala, and of course the Hillary, the Clinton machine or the Obama machine will step in. But I think their concern now is
Kamala Harris.
Can we get Biden over the finish line?
Who was complete failure in the Democratic Party primaries. Not even Democrats like her and want her. And yet they're maneuvering, because this is obviously what's going to happen. I mean, he's not going to be president for very long. They're maneuvering her to become president without being elected president. Quite extraordinary when you think about this. I mean, I think I'm right in saying she didn't even win a single delegate.
No, she didn't even make it. She didn't even make it to the primaries.
Absolutely. She didn't, exactly. I mean, she
tapped out.
She tapped out. She bombed. So, I mean, they're picking someone who the American people absolutely do not want. Not even Democrats amongst them. That's what's so extraordinary about this. So Kamala Harris, yes, but what kind of a president would she be? What kind of legitimacy as president would she have if she was leveraged into power in this way? And of course, a president who has no legitimacy, be it Biden or be it Kamala Harris, is very exposed to manipulation. And of course, people who are posting their comments, they're absolutely right when they say, Hillary Clinton might control her, or Barack Obama might control her, or other people behind the scenes might control her. And that's what it looks like.
Well, they'll definitely control her.
That's
why she's there, because they know that she can be controlled.
She can be controlled because she has no strong electoral support in the United States. As I said, she failed when she was exposed to, when she made the bid to become the Democratic Party's candidate. She bombed almost at once.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, before I ask you about the UK-Japan agreement, because I want to get your take on that, and then go to super chats. I also want your opinion on how they're not only are they signaling how they want to take the White House, and I mean it's just out in the open. We've said it 1,000 times. It's out in the open now. They're also, the last couple of days, I've seen them signaling that if they do successfully take the White House, the United States is going to go all in to Syria. I mean, full on war. Well, I mean, they're signaling that out in the open as well. What do you make of that? Does that worry you?
Absolutely.
Obviously,
it should worry. It should worry everybody. I mean, it's a completely reckless enterprise. I mean, even if the Russians weren't in Syria, an American intervention in another Middle East country, well, they've all gone so well. I mean, Iraq has gone brilliantly. Libya has gone brilliantly. So we're going to add Syria to that? I mean, it was only a few years ago that ISIS was at the gates of Damascus. Are we going to recreate that nightmare all over again? But over and above and beyond that, the fact is the Russians are there. How are you going to take them on? Are you going to take them on head on? Are you going to fight the Russians in Syria? To what purpose and for what end? Of course it should scare people. It is extremely dangerous. And can I just say, anyone serving in the US military obviously needs to take note of this, because of course, again, these people who want to use the military to execute these plans that we were talking about, what will they do if those plans succeed? They will take those same soldiers and they will throw them into conflicts in places like Syria and other places and put them in danger, again, for no clear, definable strategy that I can see.
Yeah. All right, Alexander, real quick, a very important story that broke this afternoon. UK trade deal with Japan. What's it all about?
Well, I mean, this is all about Britain finally doing that which it couldn't do when it was part of the European Union, actually making trade deals with other countries. Now, again, if you look at the media here, which of course in Britain is overwhelmingly pro-Remain, I mean, they're all scoffing at this deal. They're saying, Japan doesn't really amount to anything. Japan is the world's third biggest economy. It's a hugely important economic power. And now Britain has been able to agree a deal with it and do so very fast. It can certainly do that with other countries too. So this deal is important in itself. It's also a sign of things to come, that Britain is able to make trade deals with other countries. All those people who say, that if Britain pulls out of the European Union or doesn't agree with an economic agreement with the EU by the end of this year, then it's going to be the isolated, a little country, a little island all by itself, and it will fall into decay and poverty. Well, here's the proof that isn't so.
What do you make of the argument, very quickly, and then we'll move over to super chats? What do you make of the argument that Boris Johnson, this is the EU argument, and I want to see if there's merit to it, that Boris Johnson is going against his agreement. In other words, he can't be a trusted partner anymore on the international scene because he's not honoring an agreement which the EU is claiming is an internationally recognized treaty. And in that same light, the US will not want to do a deal with Boris Johnson, and other countries won't, because he is not honoring the agreement that he has with the EU, or is about to not honor the agreement he has with the EU. What do you make of that argument?
Well, isn't it interesting that all these people suddenly discover how important honouring agreements is and abiding by international law is? I mean, since when has the EU been concerned about honouring agreements? Do you remember a couple of months ago, there was a big constitutional court decision in Germany in which the German Constitutional Court said that some of the things that the European Central Bank had been doing were clearly illegal and wrong. What happened? Did the EU admit that? Did it change its ways? Was there a change of policy? No, absolutely not. The EU breaks international law and it breaks treaties all the time. It disregards referendum results. So I mean, maybe Boris Johnson is going to do that, but I mean, for the EU to complain about it is really a case of the pot calling the kettle black. Go on.
I'm saying in the live stream, the agreement with the EU is not law binding. Is this true? I mean, is it real? Is he really breaking an agreement? I mean, in the legal sense, do you have enough insight on this?
I don't personally think he is, actually. I know some people that get
like, if lawyers were to hash this out, what do you think would be
usually one of the problems, one of the great problems he's had is one of his ministers has come along and actually has very foolishly and very unwisely and very recklessly said, yes, we would be breaking international law in a small way. It's a crazy thing to do, and it shows a lack of discipline and perhaps a lack of loyalty within Boris Johnson's Conservative government. That's the first thing to say. But I think if push came to shove and there was a legal battle, I think that, he's got a case. I think that this is an agreement that was reached last year about the status of Northern Ireland. It was always intended to be a temporary agreement. I think that Boris Johnson and the British government are fully within their rights to say, well, once that transitional period ends, Northern Ireland remains part of the United Kingdom. Britain is able to make decisions about what goes on its own sovereign territory. That is what I think about this. I know lots of people are going to disagree with me, but that's absolutely my view. It hasn't been helped that, as I said, some members of the government have broken ranks on this and appear to have said that it does break international law. I think you should never say that in advance of any legal argument, and certainly not over the course of a negotiation.
All right. You want to do some super chats?
Absolutely.
Let's see what people are asking us here in the super chat area. Let's see. Toilet sauce, 20 euros. Will be late for the live, so in advance, comment on Germany lying about giving data to the OPCW, then saying it intends to keep it secret, and Putin refusing to talk to Merkel until she hands over the falsified data.
Well, this is. I'm so glad this thing has come up, because the Germans have been saying one thing one day and one thing the next. So last weekend we had Mr. Musk, who was the German foreign minister, say, of course we're going to hand over all this information to the Russians because we've got to go through various procedures and there's all kinds of treatments of Navalny that are needed, but we've actually already made a decision to hand all this information over. And then days pass, and then the Germans say, well, actually, we're going to give all the information to the OPCW instead. So that means we don't actually have to give it to the Russians, and we're not going to. And then the next day, the OPCW says, well, actually, we haven't had any information from the Germans. It doesn't look at all good. And it does make one wonder what the problems with this information are. Let's take a step back. Navalny is a Russian citizen. Whatever happens to Navalny happened in Russia. The Russians are being asked to conduct an investigation. How can they conduct an investigation if they are not being provided with the information upon which that information must be based? It's an absurdity, and Putin is absolutely right to refuse to speak to Merkel until this thing is cleared up. If the Germans want to hold it all back, that's fine. That's up to them. But in that case, they can't legitimately demand that the Russians carry out an investigation and make all sorts of threats about the failure to conduct an investigation, which the Germans themselves are making impossible.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm kind of going to break some news here. Maybe I'll break some news. One of our viewers sent us a couple of links from Russian media and what they're discovering in the Navalny case. And then we did some digging and found a couple of articles in the English media, but one of them was from Sputnik, which is, once again, you're looking at the state-owned media there. But through some video evidence and some investigations, once again, always from the Russian side of things, they're trying to interview everybody involved in the Navalny poisoning, and they're finding one person seems to have disappeared and has fled to the UK. Believe her name is Marina. We're going to do a video on this.
We are.
The name slipped my mind. I wasn't thinking we're going to go into the Navalny case, but the name did slip my mind. But she fled to the UK, and they're looking for her now. And the video evidence, I have to say, it shows that she was, I mean, she may have been fiddling around with the Navalny's drinks. It's, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions here, definitive conclusions, but there seems to be some strange stuff going on. Alexander, you have any comments as to what we're starting to find out with the Navalny case here?
We can't reach any conclusions. As I said, we don't have enough evidence. What we can say is this. By the way, the Russian media has, contrary to what is being suggested in parts of the Western media, it's covered this Navalny story very extensively indeed, especially the newspapers, which are, many of them are very independent. Many of them are very critical of the Russian government. It's a myth that all Russian newspapers support the Russian government. That's completely not true. But it seems that the Russian police have been able to trace all of Navalny's movements in the days running up to him falling ill. They've got a complete picture of everything he ate and everything he drank. And they've also been able to speak to many of the people who were with Navalny, including people on the airplane. There is this one individual who was a member of his entourage, who was a person who's apparently she's a Russian or has.
I'm seeing right here. I'm sorry to interrupt, Alexander. I'm seeing in the live stream before I lose it. That's why I want to just say it. From Reckless Abandon, it says Maria Pevchiki, and she's an associate of Khodorkovsky. So you may want to explain Khodorkovsky.
Yeah, so she's an associate of Khodorkovsky, and she's apparently gone to Britain and is a permanent British resident. Now, Khodorkovsky used to be the richest man in Russia. He was a very, very big league oligarch, one of the most powerful men in Russia in the 1990s. He is an absolutely hated figure in Russia. I think I can say that with any qualification at all. He was widely seen in Russia as a gangster, as incredibly corrupt. His company, Yukos, was seized by the Russian authorities, and he was arrested and tried and sent to prison on tax evasion charges. And this case then went to the European Court of Human Rights, and the European Court of Human Rights had confirmed that he had, in fact, been involved in tax evasion on a huge scale and was, found properly guilty of that crime. So I think that's a point I would say about Mr. Khodorkovsky. So Khodorkovsky went to prison. Other charges have been brought. There have been all kinds of allegations that he was involved in murders. It seems that Yukos may have had teams of hitmen operating, but exactly what Khodorkovsky's relationship to them was never legally fully established. But, anyway, a person with a terrifying reputation in Russia. After he was released from prison, he went abroad and he lives in the West, but he still has huge amounts of money to fund various anti-Putin and anti-Russian government groups within Russia itself. So this person that we've just been hearing about, apparently she's associated with him, and she's now returned to Britain, where, but, you know, I'm not going to say more, because, you know, this is obviously something that ought to be the subject of an investigation. I can't comment on it. What I will say is that the Germans have, again, shifted ground on the poisoning issue, because, of course, the Russian doctors who the Germans now accept saved Navalny's life continue to insist that they found no toxic or poisonous substances in him, certainly not any kind of Novichok type poisons. The Germans now say, apparently, but we only had this from media reports, that, you know, they found that this poison, this Novichok, is actually a completely new type of Novichok, not the one that was used in other cases and we've heard about. It's apparently slow acting. I'm not sure how nerve agents are supposed to be slow acting, but then I'm not a chemist or a biologist or a scientist, so I'm not going to comment about that. But, you know, people who are on our threads can. And supposedly it wasn't provided to Navalny in the tea, the famous tea that we saw, but in a bottle of water, which presumably was he was given on a plane, but, you know, where? And this bottle of water wasn't handed over to the Russian authorities for testing. It's apparently was kept from them and was only provided to the authorities in Germany. It begs many questions. I mean, this whole thing is very, very strange. And what we should have, can I say this again, is a proper investigation. The doctors from the two sides should get together. They should compare results. They should try and, first of all, establish why there appears to be this discrepancy in the results, who is wrong and who is right. Perhaps they're both right. Perhaps he wasn't poisoned when he was in Omsk, and perhaps he was poisoned when he was in Germany. And that begs questions. I'm not saying that was what happened, by the way, but it's a possibility. It's something. So the doctors should get together. They should try and see whether they can agree on what actually happened to him. And we should have a proper investigation, both in Russia and elsewhere, in which all the people are properly questioned. It can happen. It's been suggested. It doesn't seem to be happening. And at the moment, we're not getting the evidence. It's not been provided to the Russians. It's not been provided to the OPCW either. And one wonders why.
Yeah, that's because it's become politicized.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, I think we
very
can,
politicized.
Yeah. I think we can conclude one thing, though, and we can conclude it with certainty. Navalny has now been deemed expendable, and he did not follow through and meet the expectations of causing some sort of chaos during the Constitution vote, during the Constitution referendum. And that's when they concluded, whoever they may be, they concluded that Navalny is of no use to us anymore.
Well, that's right. I mean, either he was seen as expendable because he's failed, or he was seen as vulnerable because he's failed. One or the other. But that's clearly what it was. And by the way, the proof of the extent of his failure is the reaction within Russia since these events happened. I mean, when Boris Nemtsov, who was an important liberal Russian politician, was killed, actually, shot a couple of years ago, there were big protests about it in Moscow. Lots of people were shocked. Putin talked about it. There was 20,000 people turned out, all kinds of things. With Navalny, there's been absolutely nothing. There's been no popular reaction to this at all. And it shows the extent to which his support has completely disintegrated, such as it was, which was never very great to start with.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. From Michelle Corley. Valley S sent us a $20 super chat. Thank you, Valley, very much for that super chat. We always appreciate it. From Michelle Corley, a $10 super chat. Hi, on the road, grandson tournament baseball. Can't comment, but I'll be listening. Thank you very much, Michelle, and we wish your grandson all the best in his baseball tournament. From Paul Carden, £5 super chat. Hey, Paul, how you doing? Hey, guys, Mueller's phone has a failsafe. When it fails, he's safe.
That's very good.
Well said, Paul. Well said. From Andy Flanagan, a £5 super chat. Keep exposing the scum, gents. Thanks. Thank you very much, Andy, for that super chat. From Asavet MD, a $10 super chat. The thing with wiping the hard drive and memories of phones and computers sounds like destruction of evidence. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the short answer. If it was done intentionally. Of course, if it was not done intentionally, if it was all an accident, if all of these 27 phones were wiped by chance, it was all a coincidence, then of course it was not destruction of evidence, it was all an accident. But, you know, as I said, I've got lots of bridges I can sell you if you want to believe that.
All right. From Life of Brian, how much creed has mass media lost amongst normies in the last 3 months?
I think that the media's reputation pretty much everywhere now, at least in the West, has been falling fast. I think in the United States, it's been falling a lot. I think, you know, see surveys. I understand the trust is now almost in single figures, which gives you some idea. In Germany, by the way, it's a standard thing to refer to the media as the lying media. It's a sort of expression you often hear in Germany. I think in Britain also, I mean, the credibility of the media has fallen extraordinarily. I remember in the old days, you know, when, you know, years ago, when, you know, anything that the BBC said was just accepted as, you know, absolutely, you know, it was authoritative and nobody doubted it. You won't find many people, you still find a few, but you won't find many people who think like that anymore.
Yeah. All right. One sec, because YouTube has changed their entire dashboard, and give me a second to find these super chats. They've made it more difficult. Why they do these things, I don't know. Let's see. From Dan Hike 76, a $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Dan. From Flying Boar, a $5 super chat. This Navalny case, why Germany doing thing like this?
Who knows?
Were they going to gain something from this?
Who knows? I mean, I'm not going to speculate about this. All I would say is that the relationship between Germany and Russia is the pivotal one in Europe. I mean, these are the two most powerful countries in Europe. And, you know, this is setting those two countries at odds with each other. And if you want to look for an explanation that, you know, this has been deliberately done by someone, well, that would seem to provide the answer that, you know, it's an attempt to set Germany and Russia off against each other. But whether it's been done by people in Germany intentionally or by people in Russia intentionally, I mean, you know, we've talked about some people who might not want good relations between Russia and Germany. We've mentioned Hodorkovsky's name. He might have his own motives. I'm not, you know, speculating at all. I want to make that very clear. I don't know. But there might be other people too, hardliners, who have, you know, feelings about, you know, that they think that Russia should not have good relations with any Western country. There are people like that in Russia also. So I don't know why or what are the reasons for this. I just don't know that. What this case requires is a proper investigation. It's probably not going to get one because clearly there are too many people who are now invested in this. And as Alex rightly said, it's become too politicized, far too politicized. And it is a good thing, in my opinion, that Putin is saying to Merkel, I'm not speaking to you until we have this data, because he's right.
All right. From Odie Volmer, $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Odile Volmer. From Blue Diamond Gem, $1.99. Alex C is the tech guy we always call for help. Thank you very much for that super chat.
I'll remember that.
All right. From K Scott, 1999 super chat. We're very disappointed in Barr. How much corruption being swept under the rug? Tears for my country. Yeah, Barr and Durham. They're really taking it to the wire here.
They certainly are. And I saw a very depressing interview with Sidney Powell, who is Michael Flynn's lawyer. And I mean, smoke was metaphorically coming out of her ears over the Kleinsmith indictment and plea. And she thought that it was far too weak. And her conclusion is that, we're not going to see anything really serious happen. And Trey Gowdy, of course, from the other side, he's another person who's saying much the same thing. So, I mean, I'm if that is all right, and I'm sorry to say all the omens are pointing that way now, if that's right, then I too will be terribly disappointed with Barr. I haven't completely given up hope yet, but, we'll see.
Yeah, Trey Gowdy said the only indictment he expects is Kleinsmith.
Yeah,
said it flat out.
Absolutely, he does. Well, we saw it. I mean, yeah, and that's right. And as I said, Sidney Powell. I mean, it was. She was furious about the whole Kleinsmith plea, and she said, the prosecutors should not have accepted it, and she's right.
Okay, from Shaker AG. Hi, gentlemen. Why don't the deep state operatives first test the CV vaccine on themselves? If they are safe, then the vaccine is good. If they die, then the country is safe.
Well, true, I suppose. I mean, in
Putin
Russia,
did say that.
In Russia, they've all been taking it. I mean, the defense minister there, Shoigu, took the vaccine, and of course, Putin's daughter took the vaccine, and I believe several other important people have taken the vaccine. I think that maybe they have more faith in their vaccine than people in the US do. But I mean, it is interesting anyway.
At least they say they've taken it.
Well, that's a very good point, actually. That is a very, very good point. I mean, we can't confirm or prove it, but who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. Thank you for that super chat from Samuel Stafford, $100 super chat. Well done, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Samuel, for that generous super chat. We really appreciate it. From Vote for Conservatives, $15 super chat. I don't watch any MSM news, but cannot imagine how Adam Schiff can have any legitimacy to appear on news shows to pander his new Russia nonsense.
Well, he's absolutely right. That's entirely true. I mean, in any functioning democratic system, Adam Schiff would be completely discredited. I mean, it would be, he ought to be the subject of a censure motion in the House of Representatives. I mean, his behavior over the last couple of years has been absolutely appalling. So, I mean, but the United States at the moment does not have a functioning system. And that's what needs to change. And that's why this election in November is important.
Yep. From Asavet MD, $10 super chat. Having the military drag President Trump out of the White House before Inauguration Day is totally illegal, and the military can't do that. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely right. That's completely correct. And as I said, it is incredible that there are people who are, game planning and talking about these ideas. And again, I do generally think this. There may be some generals who are so obsessed with their hatred of Trump and so completely compromised by their links with, the neocons and the military-industrial complex and all of that. But serving soldiers in the US Armed Forces, I am sure, understand that very well. I think that if they're asked to act in an unconstitutional way, I predict many of them will refuse.
I agree. Stephen Winchester, a £5 super chat. Thank you very much, Stephen. Vote for Conservatives, $10 super chat. Extreme gaslighting when Oregon governor blames forest fires on climate change, when Antifa pyromaniacs are burning cities, and one arrested for selling brush fire in Washington.
Well, this is absolutely true. By the way, I've heard that one of these mayors somewhere is now banning tear gas, apparently. So, I mean, he's not going to allow tear gas to be used against rioters. I mean, it seems very bizarre that these people are, insist in some ways on certain things, and at the same time, they're happy to allow order to break down. Well, of course, it's not bizarre. It's actually intentional. It tells you an awful lot about the kind of people they are. But, people need to notice these things, and they need to notice how they talk about what they're very authoritarian in some things, and they give incredible license to law breaking and disorder at the same time whenever it suits their agenda.
All right, from Asavet MD, $10 super chat. All soldiers, officers, and enlisted swear an oath to defend the Constitution, and what the Democrats are proposing is to violate the Constitution. They won't do it.
That's what I think too. I think they are underestimating, these people are underestimating, just as they underestimate the intelligence of American voters. I think and the extent to which American voters are up to date with the news and follow the news. I think they're making the same mistake, underestimating the serving soldiers in the US military. As I said, I think lots and lots of soldiers will say, I swore an oath, I'm not going to break it, I'm not going to break the Constitution. And there will be problems. I think a lot of people will either resign from the military or they will refuse to carry out those orders. It is a disastrous idea, and it is crazy that there are people talking about it.
All right. From Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Update on Belarus and Nord Stream 2.
Well, let's talk about Belarus. I mean, it seems now, there've been articles now, several articles appearing in the British media, including a recent one in The Guardian, which have essentially admitted that Lukashenko is going to remain. All the strikes there have petered out, to the extent that they ever happened, which is doubtful. It seems that the whole protest movement now is one big protest every Sunday. And there was this huge mistake that was made of setting up this committee, this constitutional committee, as it was called, coordinating committee. And of course, all that happened was that Lukashenko's police is now systematically rounding them all up, except the ones who resigned. So it looks as if this whole thing has collapsed. I still think that Lukashenko has been weakened, and he gave a very interesting interview to the Russian media in which he accepted that he looked as if he'd overstayed his time. Obviously, he says he has to stay there for a little longer, but I think he is going to be gradually edged out. He is meeting with Putin on, I believe, Monday. So that's going to be an important meeting. I anticipate there will be major moves towards further integrating Belarus's economy with Russia. And you will see the Russians playing a much more active role in Belarus from now on. But I think also they will start to work towards a political rapprochement of the various forces within Belarus. So I think stabilization in Belarus, but with the Russians more heavily involved than they used to be. That's Belarus. Nord Stream 2. It's been very, very interesting to watch this tug of war going on in Germany between those who support it and those who oppose it. Now, the economics ministry, the Social Democrats, who are, of course, Merkel's coalition partner, the AfD, Die Linke, the left-wing party, several state governments, and the business community all want it to happen. You also have the very powerful Atlanticist forces, the media, much of the media, the defense ministry, those sort of people, and several people in the CDU, and the Greens, by the way, who are the most pro-Atlanticist and anti-Russian party in Germany. They oppose it. What Merkel seems to be edging towards doing is she's not going to cancel Nord Stream 2. This is typical Merkel. She's going to convene an EU summit and get the EU to impose some kind of sanctions, which I think are intended to either freeze or stop Nord Stream 2. By the way, if it's frozen, I don't think it's ever going to happen. That's my guess. But that's what Merkel is going to do. So she's going to try to shift the responsibility away. And I think the other advantage of using sanctions in that way, EU sanctions, is that apparently if the German government simply were to stop Nord Stream 2, somebody had asked me in a previous program whether there would be legal consequences. It seems there would be. There would be potential actions in contract. So if you dress it up as a sanctions, EU sanctions, German courts might not then enforce any contracts. So using sanctions, using the sanctions weapon to break contracts, commercial contracts, is an interesting idea, and it's one that Angela Merkel seems to have come up with. So a new line would in that case have been crossed, but it is so like Merkel. I have grave and increasing doubts that we're going to see Nord Stream 2.
Wow. If that happens, we are going to do a live for sure. And we're going to cover that story because that's going to be just huge news. I think that'll be the end of rapprochement between Russia and Germany. Any type of relationship.
I think so. I mean, if that happens, I mean, the Russians will say to themselves, look, we worked very hard to build up this relationship with Germany. We believed in it. We were led by the Germans into agreeing to Nord Stream 2. It wasn't a Russian idea. It was a German idea. This is an important point to understand. We made this massive commitment. We were promised by Merkel herself that it would happen. She was heavily involved in all of those discussions. We believed in the relationship with Germany. If the Germans break their word on this, and especially if they use sanctions to try to get out of their contractual obligations to us, we are never going to trust the Germans again. And I think at that point, you will see more pipelines heading east towards China. I don't see how that benefits Germany. I think there will be a lot of anguish in Germany. There will be a huge amount of anger in Germany. A lot of German business people will be very, very upset, very, very, very angry. But it would be a massive thing. I'm afraid it would be very much in character for Merkel to do.
But we also have to be honest and say that would be a massive win for the U.S. Let's not forget that Pompeo today or tomorrow, Pompeo is going to be in Cyprus following up on Lavrov's trip. Lavrov was in Cyprus a couple of days ago. Pompeo was in Cyprus. Mitsotakis met with Macron yesterday as well. And this would be a huge, huge win for the U.S. And this would be a huge win for the East Med project as well, because, you know, the whole goal, Alexander, to get this European market out of the hands of Russia.
Well, indeed. I mean, what I would say is that, of course, not building Nord Stream 2 will not prevent Russian gas flowing to Europe. I mean, it would still flow to Europe. What would have to happen is that it would continue to flow through Ukrainian pipelines, which the Russians have never wanted. But I mean, the Europeans would still have to buy Russian gas, probably in similar quantities to now. But it would be a massive political win for the US. The US has hated Nord Stream 2 because it gets in the way of its geopolitical objectives, and it brings Germany closer to Russia. So it will have pulled Germany successfully away from Russia, and that will be a massive win for them. And of course, the East Med thing, well, it will no doubt increase diversification. I don't think perhaps by that much, but of course, this is all part of the plot.
Can I throw a scenario by you, Alexander? If you look at the map and you say that, you know, okay, I know why Lavrov was in Cyprus. I think Russia's trying to figure out a way that they can muscle into or edge into the East Med. Rightfully so. They're looking after their market, and they're you know, trying to figure out if Nord Stream 2 goes bust, can we, through Cyprus, we have very good relations with, and a lot of businesses done through Cyprus, can we find a way to get in on the East Med action? But Pompeo went there, and Pompeo is going to make sure that, you know, he keeps the monopoly. The U.S. keeps the monopoly of the East Med, along with France providing a lot of the muscle. But you look at the map, East Med, say East Med is successful, because we still really don't know. Israel, Cyprus, to Greece, to Italy, with France there as well. So you have East Med, you know, moving in to take some of the market share from Russia. You have Ukraine, who is on side now with the EU, NATO, and the US. And Russia has to now depend again on Ukraine. And for Russia, Ukraine is not a trusted partner at all. And, you know, we know who runs Ukraine. That's the US. The US is de facto running Ukraine. So that causes a lot of problems for Russia there. And then you look at Turkey. Now, we know Turkey. We can say that Turkey and the Turk stream, we could say that Turkey is now with Russia, China, Iran, that kind of faction of the multipolar world for now. But we know Turkey, and Turkey can easily shift right back
Yeah.
to the US side of things.
Mm.
And they could also sit there and tell
Yeah.
Russia, you know what? Turk Stream is not really working out for us.
Yeah.
And the US is offering us a better deal. I'm throwing out maybe a wild scenario, but you can start to see how the region is starting to move now away from Russia and more towards Europe and the US if Nord Stream 2 falls apart.
Right. First of all, I mean, I don't think anything's going to happen to Turk Stream, even if there's a change of government in Turkey. It is such an important asset for them. They will continue with Turk Stream. I think that is a done. I mean, it's completed. It's working. There's no conceivable way they're going to turn off the gas. And I think that for a while, for a long time, Europe is going to go on buying Russian gas. Bear in mind something, by the way. I mean, the Russians supply piped gas. They're also now increasingly involved in the liquefied natural gas market. I actually know somebody who's involved in all of that in the Yamal Peninsula and all those places. So I don't think it's quite as dramatic as that. I think that they will be a political effect. I don't think it will be a economic effect. But what I think is going to happen is that you're going to see the Russians going to do what they had actually already decided to do back in 2014, 2015, before Merkel came along and persuaded them to build Nord Stream 2. I think they're going to develop their gas, they're going to redirect their gas volumes eastwards because they don't get these same problems when they supply them to countries like China and South Korea and Japan. And I think that's what you're going to start to see, it to an increasing degree. So it will mean Russia moving away from Europe. Now, there's some people in Europe, Macron, for example, who are very worried about that because they are concerned that if Russia disengages from Europe politically and economically, that puts Europe in a weaker position, not just economically, but also relative to other great powers, including, by the way, the US.
Interesting scenarios shaping up. From Star Trooper, a $5 super chat. Trump says he will have a deal done with Iran in a month after election. Is that a threat?
Yes, I think it's both a threat and it's an offer. And I think it's also a bit, I have to say this, a bit of election talk as well. So I wouldn't put too much on this. At the moment, a deal does not look like a likely prospect. And of course, the Chinese are moving into Iran now in a big way. So, I mean, this is, I mean, one of the things we've been talking about on the Duran is that with the break between China and the US, we are now seeing a massive global realignment. And what we were talking about with Nord Stream 2 is part of that. And with Huawei and all of these, we're seeing the West starting perhaps to reintegrate as the West, and Eurasia starting to integrate more closely as Eurasia. And perhaps these phenomena will continue. And Iran is part of that also.
Okay, from John Edwards is now a member to the Duran community. Welcome, John, to the community. From Lakeva, $10 super chat. Ecstasy for love, a mild stimulus like beanies and a steroid to produce debating aggression, and a delicious lemon lime gin shooter in the water bottle may help Biden. Don't tell me what.
Well, there you go.
There's the formula to get Biden debate ready.
It'd be very. It would have to be a miraculous, treatment to succeed. But then miracles happen.
They have them. They have the drugs.
They
have the technology. From CDN 89, $20 super chat. Keep up the good work. EU wants to keep postponement in a way that breaking an agreement. Don't forget the 25th when the UK was supposed to leave. Must keep the deadlines. The EU is using a China model of stalling long enough till the UK cracks and someone new.
Well, I think this is absolutely right. Can I just say something? And this also, by the way, applies both to Brexit and to Nord Stream 2. I mean, Merkel is now finding herself in a very odd position where she's been the Queen of Europe, but nobody wants to talk to her anymore. Putin refuses to talk to her. Lukashenko in Belarus has repeatedly refused to talk to her. And of course, Johnson and the British are now laying down ultimatums to Merkel. Also, it's a sign, by the way, of the extent to which people are no longer trusting her. So that's a thing to bear in mind. But the EU always plays for time. It always looks for ways to, extend and pretend, kick the can down the road, reach some sort of an agreement, and then you look and you find that the agreement isn't what you were led to think, and they find ways around you. And the fundamental difference is that both the British at the moment are refusing to play that game. And that is extremely new for the Europeans and for Merkel. And they clearly don't like it. So that's why you get all these complaints, about the British breaking international law and breaking agreements. And when the EU itself does it all the time.
From Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Bill Browder has anything to do with the Navalny case?
Who knows? I don't think so, actually. I mean, I think I've seen no evidence of that. By the way, I think that Bill Browder is that particular thing is an eclipse. I think that there's been articles about him in Der Spiegel, and I think a lot of people have gradually woken up to the problems in the narrative that he's been promoting. So I think Browder is fading, actually. And I doubt that he was involved in Navalny. I can't really see how he would have been. This is my own personal view. But without an investigation, how can we know?
Very true. From David Martin, $4.99 super chat. Since John Brennan was interviewed in Virginia, if he was lying to investigators, would he have to stay in the VA courts rather than the DC courts?
Very good question. That, I'm afraid, is something that a US lawyer, which I am not, is in a better position to answer than me. I would have thought that it would be in, where he lied to investigators. The place he lied to investigators is where the crime is committed, if there was a crime, and that's where he should be investigated and where he should be brought to trial. But that's just my guess. I mean, I'm not able to say. In a federal court system, which of course the United States also has, it might be more flexible. But I'm not going to try and speculate about this. I really don't know enough.
All right. From Brando Commando, $5 super chat. Trump announced Israel and Bahrain normalized relations today. Think he's got a bunch of these lined up from various countries? If so, who? Can I say who I think?
Tell me.
And then you can jump in, Alexander. North Korea. I think he's got something brewing with North Korea because he sent a tweet yesterday and he said that Kim Jong-un is okay. He's fine and he's looking forward. He said something like he's looking forward to something. And anyway, he sent a tweet. He said Kim Jong-un is fine. I think Trump is signaling that he wants to put something together with North Korea. Anyway, it has nothing to do with the Middle East, obviously, but I think North Korea is on the table. Alexander, who do you think are the other countries lined up?
Quite possibly. I mean, it may very well be that something is brewing with North Korea. I think we're going to see a string of Gulf monarchies coming along and recognizing, normalizing relations with Israel. So we've seen the UAE, we've seen Bahrain, probably Kuwait before long. All of those monarchies will come. The big question is, will MBS? Will Saudi Arabia, and that is, I think, that's the big one. And of course, the problem with doing that is that there are an awful lot of people with very, very militant views in Saudi Arabia who will not like it. And how do you control them? But we will see. Of course, if it happens before the election, another big win for Trump. By the way, he's on a roll at the moment. I mean, he's piling them up, it seems to me. I mean, and of course, if Nord Stream 2 is cancelled or frozen, as Merkel says, which means cancelled, then, as I said, he's piling them up. So, bear that in mind about Trump. He does know how to pull things. He's, he calls himself the great deal maker. Well, you have evidence for it. I mean, Serbia and Kosovo also.
Yeah. From Flying Boar, Russia should cancel Navalny's passport now and let him stay there now.
Well, good
That would be
question.
interesting.
Very good question. Whether, if he recovers, he will want to go back.
I think he needs to find a safe place. That's my thinking. That's what Navalny should be thinking for him and
or-
his family.
Or one will be found for him.
Yeah, I agree. Thinking Raven NOK 100, your channel got recommended to me by my father, and I must admit it's one of the best channels I watch. Thank you very much. Are there any books you would recommend lying on the bookshelf behind you, Alexander?
Oh, there's heaps of books. I mean, what are you interested in? International relations? Well, I've got, all kinds of books on international relations behind me. Somewhere there's books on, the.
What are you reading now?
Well, at this precise moment in time, this is going to sound rather intimidating, but I'm reading a book by a very famous British historian called Geoffrey de Saint-Croix, and it's on the origins of the Peloponnesian War. This is the great war that was fought between Athens and Sparta in the 5th century BC. Now, the point about it is, it's we've all heard about the Thucydides trap. It's a very, very good book about international relations and international relations theory. So it's about an ancient history subject, but it's actually very topical. But the other book I'm reading at the moment is Byron York's Obsession, which is, I have to say, an absolute page turner. But there's lots of other books. I mean, there's books on history. I was reading recently a book by a man called Deakin, another very famous British historian, which is about the German-Italian axis, the relationships from 1943 to 45 between Germany and Italy during the Second World War, between Mussolini and Hitler. That's a very interesting book. I've always been interested in Italian history, by the way, modern Italian history. So, I've been reading that. And then there's another book I've been reading about the Reichswehr and politics, which is the German army of the Weimar era. And that's accompanies a TV series I'm watching, a dramatization. It's a sort of, it's a sort of thriller thing. It's a big called Babylon Berlin, which is by German TV, which is all about detectives and spies. It's a bit like the Untouchables in Germany in the 1920s in Berlin.
All right, we should start a reading list. I'm looking at the live stream. We should start a reading list on Amazon.
We certainly should.
Very good, Alexander. And of course, we have to thank Spartan. Real quick, we have to thank Spartan Warrior Queen for moderating, because you mentioned Sparta in your reading list. So
absolutely. I'm one of those people who likes to read several books at the same time. I mean, it's very much my style of thing. And I'm not reading any literature at the moment, which is unusual because I often read lots of literature too.
All right. William Jones with a $5 super chat. Alex, thanks for the Texas Magic mugs in stock. My first one is on order. Absolutely. William, we are happy that you like the Texas Magic mug. It is a beautiful magic mug, I must say. I really dig the Texas flag. From Peace, $50 super chat. Thank you very much, Peace, for that super chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. From Flying Boar, a $5 super chat. Russia should not trust the EU anymore. Instead, it should help China become economically and militarily stronger.
Well, it's going to happen. I mean, this is the dynamic of the situation. I'm going to say this. I mean, I don't think the Russians have much trust in the EU, but we've done a recent program about this. I mean, Putin personally has had this extraordinary sentimental feeling about Germany. I mean, he served there, as we all know, when he was working for the intelligence services for, the intelligence arm of the KGB back in the 80s. So he speaks German, and he's brought up his daughters in German schools, and he loves Germany. So he's always had this very strong sentimental feeling about Germany. And I think that he's been far too trusting of the Germans. And he's always thought that, despite Merkel being, frankly, an extremely manipulative and untrustworthy partner, he could somehow work with her. If Nord Stream 2 fails, I think that will be the end of that. I think Putin will never trust anyone in Germany, any leader in Germany again. And I think that it won't just be Putin, by the way. I think a lot of other people in Russia will think the same.
Yeah.
And that might, by the way, affect Russian policies towards Europe. I mean, one of the reasons, we're talking about Ukraine before, one of the reasons why the Russians have shown a certain restraint in their handling of Ukraine is because they didn't want to worsen their relations with Europe. But if that isn't true any longer, then that particular restraint goes. So just bear that in mind.
Keep that in mind. Alex Mercurius, are you going to get your own YouTube channel? Yes. Yes, he is. It's going to be ready soon, guys. I will definitely announce it when it's ready. In the meantime, you can go to my YouTube channel, Alex Christoforou. Please subscribe there. All our channels are 100% connected to the Duran, so always keep that in mind. Our goal is to just get as much content to you as possible. That's what we want to do. We just want to report as much news to you. Exactly. So my channel's up, Alex Christoforou. Look for it. Alexander's channel is coming within a matter of days, so I will keep everyone posted. Everyone will be posted on that. So look out for Alexander's channel. Let's get back to the super chats from Flying Boar. CA $5. Russia should sue Germany in ICC if Merkel doesn't honor it.
Yes, I'm sure.
Talked about this.
We have talked about this. I mean, it's as I said, especially. I mean, using sanctions, EU sanctions, as a device to break your contractual obligations will be an extraordinary step. And I would take it all the way to the World Court and see what they say, because it seems to me that is a extraordinary step, and I wonder how it will play out in the courts eventually.
All right,
but we were talking about litigation that would last years.
Yeah. From Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Russia should use Turkey to stick it to Germany and Europe. We've talked about this too.
We've talked about this too. Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to say that I think that Erdogan, playing Erdogan and stirring up things with Erdogan would be a rather dangerous project, given what a personality Erdogan is and how volatile that part of the world is. So I'm not sure the Russians would want to do that. Actually, I think at the moment they've got Turk Stream. I think that's, as I say, I'm confident that's going to continue to work and it will expand. I think that they can afford to be a little relaxed about Turkey, actually.
Yes, we are on BitChute, and we are also on LBRY as well. LBRY. Actually, our whole catalog is now on LBRY. Yeah. As is our whole catalog on BitChute. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Vote for Conservative says look into DLive as an alternative platform. YouTube has been busy banning conservatives. I am aware of DLive. So far, we're all in good standing with with YouTube. So knock on wood. But we are on BitChute. We are on LBRY. So also keep that in mind. Actually, LBRY is really nice. I really like the clean design of it. Let's see. From Philip Hansen. This is a $10 super chat. This one's interesting. Can you discuss what happened to former PM Costa Karamanlis? According to Wikipedia, there is a plot against him for reaching out to Russia.
I probably, Alex, more about this.
I actually, I was in Athens when maybe we'll tackle this in a video. I don't know how we'll do it. But I was actually in Athens. My office was maybe a block away from his chief of staff. I believe it was like his chief of staff at the time. And he jumped from his balcony window, a second-story window, because the rumor has it is that once the deep state and the intel agencies found out that Karamanlis was looking to actually get a Russian air base in the north of Greece and to actually build more of a concrete relationship with the Russian military and Russia, the deep state activated its spooks, its handlers in Greece, and they came out with this DVD that they leaked to the newspapers, which had Karamanlis, his Gumbaro, and his chief of staff. I forgot his name. It was many years ago.
It was. I remember it. Yeah.
You remember, and supposedly the DVD, I can't really say the words that the DVD had. Supposedly it was taken by his secretary, and she was giving him a you-know-what. and he said, "You give the best, you know what's." And the DVD came out, and he said, "You give the best, you know what's better than the prime minister."
No,
And all hell broke
it
loose.
was extraordinary scandal.
Yeah,
I remember it very well.
You remember it, and this guy jumped from like the second story of the balcony. And my office was like right down the street, and I remember it. He lived. He ended up living. The DVD disappeared. And Karamanli's government eventually fell, and that was that. Yeah. Look, it was crazy, but needless to say, Greece never built that air base in Russia. They never formally created any kind of concrete military partnership with Russia. A port or an air base. It was either a port or an air base, and eventually Greece moved into the side of where it naturally belongs, you could say, with the U.S. and NATO. You're not going to pry Greece out of NATO and the U.S. It's not going to happen. Anyway, that's the short of the story. It happened like 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. That's what I remember from it. That's an interesting question, and that's all I can add to that. I remember it very well that day. Very well. All right, from Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Macron should tell Merkel not to mess with Nord Stream 2 in order to keep Russia in Europe.
Well, it's quite possible that he will. I mean, Macron and the French have at times been opposed to Nord Stream 2 because they felt that it might make the Germans too strong. But Macron has this overarching idea that, Europe needs Russia to counterbalance, in order to become a force in world affairs, to counterbalance the US and China. This is very much the way that he's talking. So he is planning, by the way, to go and visit Russia and to meet with Putin. So he's again acting at cross purposes with Merkel. So this is Macron for you. I mean, he plays this game in the Eastern Mediterranean. He confronts Erdogan there, and now he's talking about going to Moscow and meeting Putin there. And apparently the Germans have, or at least Merkel, doesn't want him to go, and he's apparently insisting on doing so. So, these are complicated things. And one of the things I found about international relations is that, whatever happens, the game never stops. There's always someone somewhere who's got some particular idea coming up. And Macron is obviously that person at the moment. So we'll see. Whether he will want to persuade the Germans to stick with Nord Stream 2 is another matter.
All right. From the Westphalian Republic, American Spirit Love. Interesting handle. There's a new member to the Duran community. Welcome. That's a great handle. From Julie Butler is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Julie. From Star Trooper. This is a good question. Worry more about Trump in Iran or Biden in Syria?
Oh, Biden in Syria. I mean, Trump has consistently shown that he doesn't want war with Iran. He will always take things. Things will sometimes go pretty close to war, but he won't do it. I mean, that's not Trump's agenda at all. His idea is to put pressure on the Iranians, and then to cut a deal with them, which will be better than the one that he walked away from, the JCPOA. That's what Trump wants. Biden, who of course will not be in charge. Always remember that the people behind him, well, they have, they have unfinished business in Syria, and that could mean a war there. So, I mean, that's much more dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah, Biden. If Biden wins, the U.S. is going to war in Syria. That's my take. That's what I believe. From Olaf Rasmus Voren, NOK50, Alex Alexander, you are one of the best and most educated commenters on the internet. Appreciate your service. Greetings from Norway. Thank you very much. Our greetings to Norway as well. From, where is that super chat? From William Jones. Alex, I already read that. Thanks for the Texas Magic Mugs. All right. Thank you, William, once again for that. From Flying Boar. Is Vučić the most stupid leader? Didn't he read the agreement on Kosovo before he signed it?
There's something very strange about. I mean, this is a very strange agreement, and it's been controversial in both Kosovo and Serbia. And it seems the Kosovo parliament is now going to reject it. I mean, so it might not even get going. I think that Vučić is a very devious individual He understands that he's got to keep Serbia friendly with Russia, because that's what many people in Serbia want. And at the same time, I think he's always hankered at some level to bring Serbia into the sort of Euro-Atlantic family. So I think he's trying to play the two off against each other to balance things out. And I think he probably went further in this meeting in the Oval Office than he thought he had. So I think he's in an awkward position, and I'm beginning to wonder whether this agreement isn't going to unravel, actually, because apparently there's been a strong reaction against it in Serbia, and there's a very strong reaction against it in Kosovo too.
Yeah. Let's see. Robert Mullen is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Robert. And Joe Public is a new member to the Duran community. Let's see. Let me go through the chats. I think I got them all. I think I got all the super chats there. If I did not get a super chat, then just email me and we'll be happy to answer that super chat in another live stream, or maybe even in a video. We'll see.
We'll make notes of them.
I think I got all of them though.
We'll certainly come back to it. I mean, it's a bit awkward that, you know, the YouTube has rearranged its.
They used to have them all in one place, and I could just, you know, break it off into another window. And now they have it in frames, and it's just a complete mess. All right. Anyway, that's it. Alexander, anything else that you want to add?
It's a phenomenally stimulating discussion. But my goodness, I mean, the world is becoming more and more interesting all the time, as the Chinese would say. So at least the Chinese used to say. So we'll see what works out. I mean, the focus and the most important place where the big things are happening at the moment is the United States. I mean, we talked a lot about Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 is important. Other things, and German-Russian relations are important, but it is the United States where at the moment history is being made. So we need to keep track of that, and we mustn't lose sight, not just of what is happening in the United States, but of what has happened there over the last few years.
All right. We will wrap things up then. Guys, you can also join. Hit that join button underneath the video as well if you want to become a member of the Duran community. Also, go to the Duran shop. We'll do a quick plug. Here's my US magic mug right here, the duranshop.com. You'll find a link underneath this video as well.
I've got it too.
There you go.
And I've also got my British one too, by the way.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Also, a quick plug to our friends at Patriotic Legacy. They're running a contest where you can win the American flag and the Patriot Beacon 3. That's right. You'll find the link for that also underneath this video. You can also use the code Duran20 and get a 20% discount at the Patriot Legacy website as well. 20% when you use the code Duran20, and you're automatically entered into the contest. Spartan Warrior Queen, thank you very much for your moderation. Once again, we really appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you to everyone and their super chats that they sent and the comments that they sent in the live stream. Thank you for joining us on this Friday evening or morning or afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. Here it is evening for me. Alexander, I know it's evening for you as well in London. And keep an eye out for Alexander Mercouris is a YouTube channel that's coming soon. My YouTube channel, Alex Christoforou. Search for it. Subscribe to it. I'm putting up videos. I'm putting up about 2 to 3 videos every day as well. Our goal is to do as many videos as we can, as much content to get it out to you, because we appreciate everything you do for us. Alexander, final words before we sign off.
It's been an absolutely stimulating and wonderful program. We will be coming back with another program like this, we hope, next Friday. So we're going to try and do this a regular thing.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening, great morning, great afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Take care.